Right, okay, so welcome to episode 23 of the Me and ADHD podcast. In today's episode, I'm having a conversation with Bethany Ashley Smith. Who has a background in mental health as a mental health nurse, trauma, addiction, and ADHD therapist, and is the founder of Discovering Truths. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. What a lovely welcome, Darren. Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I mean, we've talked also briefly before about what we're going to be speaking about today. So, kind of in a nutshell, then, what is the assessment process from start to finish, generally speaking?
With ADHD, well, I can tell you what my training is and what to expect in a healthy, robust assessment. So, as you know, I'm a mental health nurse's background, but a therapist and have a specialist interest in ADHD, partly through my own diagnosis
Yeah,
journey. And it alarming me that I had no idea what the process was, what ADHD was, and that none of my team seemed to know that much about it at the time. So that alarmed me in mental health. So what I did about that, I decided to do my own training, and I found very little at the time. This is going back a couple of years now, a few years, training around ADHD for healthcare professionals outside of psychiatrists. Um, which again sparked my interest. Why is this? But because of my long nursing background, what I was able to do was sit on the training at King's College Hospital, King's College University, in the assessment and treatment of ADHD, which you can train in as either a psychiatrist, psychologist, or experienced nurse. So off I went and did that. And that's where I'm gleaning this information from today. So what would be included? Well, there's a lot of controversy over ADHD diagnosis, hence why it's something I'm really passionate about, it being right for lots of reasons. I'm sure we'll go over that. But there's different aspects and there's different reasons for the aspects. And to do a robust assessment, what was really clear to me in the training was a lot of it is with one's experience of working in mental health care and neurodiversity. A lot of the assessment is being with and knowing the symptoms so you can see them in present
yeah,
time. So number one, an assessment needs to be over several hours for the history taking, because some of it is the history taking, which is massively important, as we'll go on to explore. But some of it is just how somebody with ADHD is going to present in a couple of hours and what things you're going to notice as symptoms. So that's number one, is a sort of 2 or 3 hour assessment talking over your history with that medical professional. The second part is what I guess we can call objective assessments, which is what people will be used to. And I guess anyone who's questioned whether they've got ADHD or someone they know has probably done a bit of exploring online. And it's kind of your tick boxes. How often does X happen? Never, a bit, a lot, all the time. And so we've got some assessment tools which are known as the DIVA is one. That's the one I use. There's a Connors scale. There's the Brown scale. That's number two. And number three is what's sometimes used, and I don't believe it's used in all, but I know we talked about it in our test, is the QB check, which is something you do online with either a psychologist or assessing medical profession. And it really is, it's literally you're answering and following systems and patterns online, and it then analyzes all that and gives a score as to whether a neurodiversity is indicated.
the QB. I that was really hard. That messed with my head.
Mm,
Really, it on paper it sounds, and I've had this discussion before. On paper, it sounds really easy to do.
yeah.
It's maybe for a neurotypical, possibly, but for my head, it was just mind blowing to
Mm,
try and focus for that long. To do
mm,
these simple little things, to press the
mm.
button when I needed to press it was yeah, don't want to do that again. No.
No, and that's interesting, your perspective, because when I took it, I didn't really understand what it was, and I thought, well, this is dead easy. So it's going to undo all of the other bits of assessment, and I scored almost, 100% ADHD or whatever the outcome is on it. So with you, over my head.
Yeah, it was. I've done it twice now. When I got assessed for autism, which was my first assessment, they said no
Mm,
to that, but they said they saw a lot of sort of ADHD coming through, and they were really nice to look. What we can do, we can give you these to do. And they gave me that to do to see
mm,
how it was, because I said that if I am ADHD, I'll go down the medication route, and they were a psychologist and they didn't do the medication, so I knew I'd have to go
mm.
somewhere else. So they allowed me to do that, and it was awful. And then when I went to get assessed for ADHD, I said, "Look, I've done it. Here's all the results from the QV test." And they said, "No, we will have to do it." I'm like,
Mm,
and yeah, and I was in the 99th percentile.
mm.
So it's yeah,
Telling.
yeah.
Yeah. And the bit I forgot actually that's really important to a robust assessment and is typically asked is for some collateral information. So usually that's from two sources. So that's somebody other than the client filling out and giving some information about childhood and whether symptoms were present. So like a parent or someone if it's available, or school reports can help. And someone from the current, so either a partner or an employer or a very close family friend, to give their view of symptoms now.
So what would happen if from the past, if you didn't have your parents with you, or the
Mm.
parents were at the age where can't really remember that far back? What
Yeah.
what would happen then?
Well, I think, and that's a common thing you talk about because it does happen. And I think the other thing is that what I'll often hear my clients bringing, or not often, but sometimes it's not abnormal, is that their parents don't buy into it. It's something everybody's got. It's that type of comment that we hear
Yeah.
all the time on the media. Um, and it's just ideal. It's if we're going for excellence and we want every standard ticked, is that if we can get that information, we can. If not, it's asking client for their history of school and doing what we can, looking at school reports if they're available, and look at it from that aspect.
Okay. So it takes a while, quite a while to go through.
Mm.
Um, and when you're doing that, when you're going through all that, what are I guess the clinicians looking for? What are they? I know they're asking the questions, but
Yeah.
are they looking at things or what you're doing? Are they noticing down your movement patterns and things like that?
Sure, sure. That's some of it because I purposely, because as an ADHD individual myself, is what I forget is the objective information at the time. So that is the one bit of information I've got in front of me today because it is pertinent and it's to where do we get how do we know what ADHD is? Well, there's a set of symptoms that's listed by either the DSM, so the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, of what ADHD is and what the symptoms are and what criteria is needed. So there's two sets of symptoms in adult ADHD, and there's 9 symptoms of inattentiveness. And there's also 9 other symptoms of the hyperactive and impulsive symptoms as
Yeah,
well. So for an adult to get ADHD to meet that criteria, what we're looking at is that these symptoms have been present in the last at least 6 months, the impact of them, and given that it's a chronic condition that we're born with, have they been there throughout life or is this a new thing? How long has it been there? Is it always there? Because that's quite important. So meet the diagnosis, you need to have at least 5 of those symptoms collectively in those categories.
yeah.
So as an assessing clinician, somebody can tell you those things. And I think, and I know this from my own journey, I'm like, well, what am I going to say? Because certainly, and I don't know about you, sometimes going back, it's different now because people know a bit more about ADHD. I know more about me and I know these things. But when went into my own assessment, I'm like, well, what do I tell them? Because the lie that I'd believed my whole life was that I just wasn't good enough, or I didn't pay enough attention, or I was being naughty, or if I put more time in, or if I planned it differently, then I wouldn't be experiencing what I was experiencing. But actually, that was a symptom. All of those things were symptoms. How did I articulate it? Well, probably not very well in my assessment. But now, when I'm working with clients who come along to me with potential ADHD or ADHD, is I can see that symptom in the fact that they might not have prepared what to tell me because they didn't know how. They didn't understand the objective in the way it made sense to them. So I might be assessing how they ask those questions or how they find out information. I might be assessing how long someone can listen to a sentence before they start fidgeting and that type of thing. So it will come out because we're living with it all the time, unless we've learned to mask it very, very well.
Yeah, yeah. I remember them on the report that I was given. Noticing, when my feet were moving and how many words I
Mm,
was using to explain things, and I was like, how do they? I didn't know that. How are they
mm,
noticing all of this?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's a lot that really goes into it.
Mm,
So it's I mean, we'll come on to the overdiagnosis and misdiagnosis bit in a minute, but
yeah.
it's crazy how people think that's happening more than it is, considering
Yeah.
how much goes in
Mm,
to the assessment, you
mm,
know. But okay, so why can't, I mean, you when you go to the GP, all right, you get assessed and diagnosed within sort of 5 or 10 minutes or something, or
yeah.
if you go to a psychiatrist, psychologist for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and they talk to you for an hour and they've come up with all these things
Yeah.
about you, but why 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 did it take so long to get a go through the proper assessment to get everything and then the diagnosis? Why can't it be
Mm,
done in a shortened period of time like everything else? This is like the longest assessment for anything that I
yeah.
know of.
Yeah, well, I mean, it isn't and it isn't. And I mean, I think the thing is with ADHD that to this day, and I know the answers objectively, but it still doesn't quite make sense to me is where does it sit in the realms of healthcare? So, for example, most people would know what a physical illness is and be able to define that and put something in a category. So I've got flu, or I've had a diagnosis of cancer, or I've got diabetes. We know where that sits. If we go with mental health, is most people nowadays would know names of mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar. They're common words that we might not know exactly what they mean, but we know what they are and where they sit. Um, and I think with ADHD and other neurodiversities, autism, what we know the title is a neurodevelopmental condition. But what does that actually mean? So it gets a little bit trickier when we look at that. And even with the illnesses, I've said some of them might sit across categories, and a lot of them often do. There's misinterpretations
Yeah.
about it. But why does it take so long? Well, I think with lots of diagnoses, they do take a long time. So, for example, if we think of other sort of long-term conditions, whether they're permanent or not, like ones we touched on, like cancer or even type 2 diabetes, which can come and go, is that it wouldn't come off the back of a 5-minute GP conversation. It would lead to further investigation and a trail with other professionals. And some of the testings might be quite quick because they might be a blood test that's done in 5 minutes. We just wait for results for a day or two, and it's collected information. And I think if you look at ADHD like that, is that it's in some respects not a long diagnosis or assessment period. It's just the information has to be collected and the wait to get there is quite a long time. But like any other condition, it is by, especially if you go to an oncologist, if you had cancer, you'd go to a neurologist with a brain injury. And so it's the same with ADHD. And I think it's the getting there that is the long journey.
So what, with that long journey then, with all the questions and everything that goes into it, what factors need to be taken into consideration then? So you're going through for an assessment, and you go through
Yeah.
all the questions and you're talking about your life. So what does the clinician look for, and what could he sort of, or is she sort of like rule out or rule in?
Sure. So, okay. So, one thing that's really important with robust ADHD assessment, and something that really, for me, was quite pertinent when I trained to assess, was that other conditions need to be taken off the table first that might look like ADHD. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. So conditions that can sometimes look a bit like it but aren't ADHD are bipolar. It's that changing, that fast pace, that slow, this, that not understanding, the sometimes being switched on, sometimes not. That's one condition. Borderline personality disorder is another condition that needs to be taken off. It's something that is a chronic condition that can trip people up in a different way, that often starts in childhood and then can develop into a condition. And for me, nowadays, it's things like one is that combination that we hear about all the time, which is anxiety and depression. Because let's think about it, is one really speeds you up because you're worrying, you're in flight or fright all the time with your anxiety, and the depression sort of stops you. So all of those things can in the moment look like ADHD. So first of all, before we even get to the ADHD, we need to take that off the table. And then we start looking at, has this been there for a lifetime? Have other family members got predisposition or diagnosis or symptoms of this? And is there anything else that could be masking it, like a substance abuse or other addiction? And all of those things need to be almost assessed and taken off before we get to the sort of neuro assessment.
It's interesting how much needs to go into it and how much you have to take in
Mm.
consideration. Um, and I mean, I remember I'm one of the, I guess, many that was diagnosed depression and anxiety. Only
Yes.
now to find out is actually that wasn't my real
Mm.
diagnosis. It was a symptom
Yeah.
of
Mm.
my actual diagnosis, which is
Yeah.
ADHD. And I remember sort of going on, and then when I started my medication, it was, yeah, I don't need these other medications now for depression. This is very, very different. My meds are working really well for me.
Yeah.
You know, I can feel the difference in my head and how I look at things, how I feel about things, and everything was I guess a lot clearer, and I could
Mm.
understand and everything, and my
Mm.
my life sort of calmed down.
Yeah.
But going back to that, being diagnosed with a symptom at the end of the day, the meds weren't
Yes.
working, nothing was working. It was just,
Mm.
it didn't
Mm.
make sense.
No, and I think for many, and I can sort of put my hand up to these wanderings, is there must be something wrong with me as a human when the treatment's not working because it's the wrong
Yeah,
treatment.
yeah. It's. I mean, I always thought it's a key indicator when people say, "Oh,
Mm.
it's no such thing as ADHD." Well, actually,
Mm.
if everything I'm putting in place, which is directed towards ADHD, and the
Yeah,
medication I'm on for ADHD, if all of this is working, that's got to be a relatively good
tells you
sign that
something.
maybe it
Yeah.
is ADHD. You
Mm.
know, so all these very well trained professionals who diagnosed me with depression and anxiety,
Mm.
none of that worked.
No.
So it's but I guess it is what it is. I guess to a degree. Um, okay, so how do you think that the process could be improved, or do you think it can be improved?
Yeah, I thought about that because I know that we sort of discussed before what we might talk about, and it sort of part of it stumped me because look, it's what I'm really glad about is that ADHD is becoming more recognized and not just ADHD, other neurodiversities are more acknowledged and catered for. And I hope that continues, especially in the education system, that, education becomes more rounded. Um, but I don't know because part of it is a funding issue, which is really hard to find a solution for. But I didn't like that. I didn't like sort of stopping with, well, what could help? Something that I wonder if could be useful is for those people who are going to NHS services with a potential of having ADHD or not, is to perhaps have, I don't know, some information given by GP or a GP's prepared for that question and being able to collate some of the things I've talked about today. So whether that is doing some of the objective assessments and giving them to GP, along with some of the collateral information from family and, employers, what have you. as some of it, whether it's sort of even GPs having a tick box, does this person have a history of X, Y, Z, has treatments worked? And being able to cluster that somehow to then somehow have done some of the gatekeeping to get someone to a service
Yeah,
quicker was the only thing I could come up with right now.
it's an interesting one. I think for me, I would love things to be standardized more.
Yeah.
Um, I think the process of doing it could be a lot slicker,
Mm,
as we know.
mm,
But
mm.
where you go, a lot of people have gone and they've gone privately, or and
Yeah,
then they come back and try to get help for the NHS. It's like, no, we don't recognize. You
yeah,
need to get reassessed
yeah.
and everything before we. And it's like, what? Mm,
Mm,
That's just making everything so much harder.
mm, mm,
Well,
mm.
I don't understand why we can't just be. This is how the assessment is done. A
Mm.
real robust assessment.
Yeah.
It takes this amount of time to do it. These are what you put into it. Yes, this part of it is going to be
Mm,
subjective. This is going to
mm,
be objective.
mm,
Um, and then as long as that's happening,
mm.
it is recognized across the board, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but everything seems to be really hard for
It really
everybody, you
does.
know.
It really does. And just talking to you today, the other thing that sprang to mind is just sort of more, if there is more support in place moving forward, is that schools are more able to recognize symptoms and put in some support at that stage.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Even just learning techniques, if nothing else, different teaching techniques.
yeah. No, no, you're right. I think, the earlier you get there, the better.
Yeah.
One of my guests, Sarah Templeton, when she was on, she was saying
Mm.
about um, what would be a really good thing and relatively easy and cheap thing to implement. I say this loosely because I haven't got a clue. It's so for the schools, for certain year groups, I guess, and at the beginning of
Yeah.
school in September, first day
Mm,
back or first couple of days back, they don't do any work.
mm,
That's when you sit down and they go through
mm,
the the pre-assessment checks, I guess, for all the neuro divergent sort of areas, be it ADHD,
mm,
dyscalculia,
mm.
dyslexia, autism, all those, get them out the way to see
Yeah,
them, and
yeah,
they can do
yeah.
the throughout the each year, whatever.
Mm,
And okay, the schools might not have the facilities to
mm,
be able to do anything with that, but at least they can say, hey, parent, this is what we
mm,
found.
mm,
Maybe you want to go and investigate that. You know what I mean?
mm,
So you can start at a really early age for everybody,
mm.
you know?
I think so, and I think with that in mind and we'll possibly come on to it. But if you look at treatment options for ADHD, one of them is medication. The other one we sort of thrown about, but actually could perhaps do with some more guidance around his coaching. I do a lot of therapy with people and coaching, and it was really helpful. But some of that is around things like dietary, exercise, and sleep advice, which can be really tweaked to fit a neurodiverse person, at least as part of treatment options. That's free, and it's just education.
Yeah. That's another thing I found really quite bizarre for ADHD and autism as well to a degree, but
Mm.
for ADHD, it's one of the most heavily researched sort of mental conditions, if that's the
Yeah.
right phrasing, out there. It is heavily,
Mm.
and it's got
Mm.
so much information
Mm.
and factual information. We know it's
Mm.
there. We know it's a thing. We know
Mm.
kind of like, wow, what's going on in the brain. We can scan the brain and have a look at
Mm.
the differences. It's all there, and
Mm.
it's been in the medical world, the medical journals for hundreds of years. It's not
Mm.
new, but at the same
No.
time, it's still kind of acted upon from society like it is brand new and people are making it up.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
it's been heard of
Mm.
for longer than many of the conditions
Mm.
that we have and hear about nowadays.
Mm.
but it's just not viewed the same because I'm guessing it's behavioral rather than um, physical, I guess. But it's
Sure. And my answer to that, when I sort of hear people using that type of argument, is it's a neurological condition. Any other neurological condition, and this is usually in respect to meds, I'm having this conversation, nobody would bat an eyelid if medication was indicated. So things like Parkinson's syndrome, motor neurons disease, they're all neurological illnesses. Does anyone question diagnosis and treatment? No. Why with ADHD? I just don't understand. But what is I'm really passionate about is two aspects of ADHD. One is the accurate diagnosis and then onward treatment plan because I feel it's so important. But the other thing is it's the physical elements that seem to cluster that I'm seeing more and more research about. So sort of co-occurring common themes are things like skin conditions, asthma and allergies, POTS and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome all seem to sit in this bubble with some clients, um, which I was asked a lot about in my assessment. It's not a routine. I think I just hit to a professional who's in the same vein as me, which was great. But all of that needs to be taken into consideration because we're now learning that lots of different reasons, those with ADHD tend to have a life expectancy that's 10 years less than a neurotypical.
but it's made up. Yeah, it's that's kind of hard to hear. I
Yeah.
think I mean, a lot of us, be it through just speaking online to people, you hear all those things, but
Mm.
then to come out, have that research, because it's been done before a while ago, but have it done again and to say yes, it's like yeah, it hits hard. It's
Yeah,
hard.
it does.
So why do you think at the moment, I guess, there's a high percentage of people sort of who go for the say a private assessment and get the diagnosis. There's a high percentage you go private, most of which who go private are getting that diagnosis. Are they paying for a diagnosis? I'm stirring
Do you
it
mean,
now,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
is there something else behind it?
Um, Gosh. Well, I mean, look, it's a sort of one of those topics that has elements of different levels of controversy around it because is it that people are paying for diagnosis? Well, surely that's only because they can't get the service on the NHS, so the other option is doing nothing. That could simply be the answer. Um, But I think there's so many aspects to that. So, for example, I work in private practice now and I'll routinely see people with ADHD. But what's easier to call on is working in sort of hospital groups and things when there would be ADHD clients, when ADHD perhaps wasn't in the press so much. And because certain psychiatrists would have specialisms in it. So, pre press and more sort of understanding and sort of publicisation around neurodiversity when a client might come along to a private assessment, they might not be going for ADHD, but it might be that that's picked up by clinicians that have insight into it. So that's one aspect, and that I guess has developed as sort of more people. There's been more demand for ADHD assessments. Um, do I think there's misdiagnosis? I think there probably is because are all private ADHD diagnoses robust? Probably not, like any service. Some are going to be better than others. Some are going to be more accurate. I think it's a whole boiling pot. But yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is if people could get it on the NHS, they'd probably be having it done there and it wouldn't be a private diagnosis.
It's like you said, you if you're struggling, when people are struggling,
Mm,
I hate to think that there's people out there going, oh, I think I might have ADHD. I've got to spare a couple of grand. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through some
yeah,
private
yeah,
assessments.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that happens. And if people did that,
Sure,
that would be a little bit weird, to be fair. Um, and a little
absolutely.
bit, oh, it'll be actually,
Sure.
it'd be impulsive, very impulsive
Sure, sure,
thing to do.
sure.
So maybe, but you go private because the waiting list is so long. You
mm,
want to go on the waiting list because you're struggling.
mm,
But if the waiting list is like 5 years, 6 years,
mm,
you can't struggle for that amount of time. You need to do
yeah,
something. So,
mm,
the majority of people who pay private,
mm,
who've had to save and use their life savings or been
absolutely.
very lucky because families help them out or things like that,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
they go to that point and no one just kind of thinks, yeah, we'll just go private.
yeah,
They go through a whole lot of stages before they get to that point where they want
yeah,
to,
mm,
use that money for
mm,
that. And then more than likely, they've been sort of not studying, but researching it for months
for a
or
long time.
years beforehand
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
want to be sure that
yeah.
that money they're dishing out, because some will
Is
do the
well
double
spent.
diagnosis of assessment of ADHD and autism. So you're paying a
Mm,
couple of grand.
mm,
You want to make sure that you're confident it's going to be
mm,
that.
mm, mm,
No, I'm not.
mm,
I'm not sure. I don't think it is, but I'll spend
mm.
that money anyway.
Sure.
So you are pretty sure in your own
Yeah,
mind because you've done so much
yeah.
research about it. So I guess the majority
This
of
is
people
it.
that will pay private have done that
Mm,
research beforehand
mm.
before they go there.
Well, this is it. And I think stepping away from ADHD for a moment, because something that people on and off have asked me over my mental health career, whether it's nursing, therapy, or whatever, is well, how do you know someone's not just lying? And, if is actually in some respects to me, it almost doesn't matter when I'm working as a clinician with symptoms, because if someone's having to lie about something that is distressing, or that they're depressed when they're not, or that they're a heroin addict when they're not, that to me is a symptom of a problem. Does it matter what the problem is? Not always. But that misinformation is telling me that person's asking for help. So what's more important, the help or the diagnosis? And that's different case to case.
Yeah. No, yeah. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because if people go, I mean, especially you would have, that's a lot of
Yeah.
lying you have to do and pretending and
Yeah.
acting in your,
Mm.
3 4 hour,
Consistently.
yeah,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
really
And collecting a lifetime of lying,
yeah.
it's very hard to capture that.
So to have that and go, yes, I've got a diagnosis, and then go to work. So
Yeah.
I've got this
Yeah,
diagnosis, and
yeah,
actually
yeah.
get no help, and
Yeah.
probably might,
Mm,
get chastised or whatever for it, and that
mm,
treated differently for. Yeah, you would have to think there's other issues going on for someone to want to do that.
absolutely.
So what do you think about? I mean, you got well, really not the really possibility of people lying about it, but you got people who are
Mm,
talking on the news and social media who are clearly have no training in anything
mm,
medical whatsoever.
mm, mm.
And if they did, it's in something completely utterly different.
Yeah.
Um, Coming out with saying it's not real. ADHD isn't real, or it's been overdiagnosed, or it's been too many people are on prescriptions for it, and it's like which
Mm,
if you do any basic research, it
yes.
isn't. It's under
Mm,
diagnosed and
mm,
under
mm,
prescribed.
mm, mm, mm.
If you look at the figures, but how do you feel about those kind of people?
I've got so many mixed views on it, because one aspect of that is I'm so thankful there is more understanding in the media, and more acknowledgement of neurodiversity in media. But also, I'm really unhappy about it because of the misrepresentation. So, on a day-to-day level, when I see a meme on Instagram about being scatty or something, my heart warms a little and it makes me feel okay. And it does, and it's true, because that really does help me moment to moment. But the bigger picture of it doesn't help on a wider scheme, because actually, that's one aspect of ADHD symptoms, for example, that really gets hooked in on. So, if someone, whether they're a professional or not, is just sort of seeing that all the time and not doing their own research, that concerns me, because we know there's this prevalence of other conditions that sit with neurodiversity, and that it's a shorter life expectancy, and that there's a higher prevalence of substance misuse, and there's statistics around suicide too. So I find it really hard that somebody would make a throwaway comment like that. But I think overarching media plays parts in all of this, in a good and a not so good way. Remind me what the question was. How do I feel?
Yeah.
Because I had another thought. I do think there's always grains of truth. And this is a thing that can really, really spark passion in people, because look, it really saddens me when I hear something like that. But there is definitely a truth that there is misdiagnosis out there. There is definitely a truth that there's more people questioning it when possibly that isn't what their diagnosis is. But it doesn't mean that people aren't on a journey and looking for something to enhance health and skills. And that for me is key, because I just think the importance of robust, accurate diagnosis is important, because I've worked with people when they've been misdiagnosed and it causes a whole heap of problems. I've worked with people that can't get diagnosis, that clearly have all the symptoms and criteria, and they've got this huge block in being able to get on with a, in inverted commas, normal life. So it comes back to your point earlier about there being sort of a more generic understanding for all healthcare and educational individuals, professionals, to be able to start sort of understanding this along journeys of lifetimes.
Yeah. I think education is a big thing, and people need to
Yeah.
understand, especially people at that kind of level. They need to understand
Mm,
what they say carries weight, and it shouldn't
absolutely.
do for some
Mm,
people, but it carries a lot of weight, and
mm,
it is a lot of it is all in the word. And like you say, yeah, some people are diagnosed with ADHD who actually haven't got ADHD,
mm,
but you can't just look at that. I mean, there's you
yeah.
see in the news all the time when someone goes to the
Yeah.
doctors and they were fobbed off and actually, with tummy aches, and
Mm,
actually they've got whatever
mm,
stage
mm,
cancer, and that
mm,
is there all the time. But
mm,
there isn't anything out there saying, it's so underdiagnosed, or if they've been given another
mm,
diagnosis, oh, this is overdiagnosed.
mm,
It just seems to be
mm.
about the neurodiverse aspect and the
Yeah, the
the send
label.
the send community,
Mm,
special educational needs
mm,
and disability. It seems to be about that all the time. And like, yeah,
mm.
it can be misdiagnosed, but at the same time, no one else is talking about the late
No.
diagnosed ADHDers who have been misdiagnosed with other things
Yeah,
all their
yeah,
life.
yeah. Absolutely.
I've been misdiagnosed and I've been medicated for something I have
Mm,
not got
mm,
as a main diagnosis. It's been a symptom
mm,
of something that
mm.
wasn't diagnosed at the time. And I'm not the only one. It's a lot of other people out
No,
there. So
no.
it can be misdiagnosed just like everything else, because there's human error.
Just like
Humans are
everything
doing it.
else.
They
Mm,
can make mistakes. They can
mm,
see things into,
mm.
it's um subjective. Um, when you're looking at things subjectively, you can,
Yeah,
come up with different
yeah.
conclusions, and it's just not fairly portrayed. You
No,
know,
and back to your point at the start of our discussion, which was about why is an ADHD assessment seemingly such a long process? It's to make sure it's accurate diagnosis, and that it's over a lifetime, and that there's different ways of assessing it to create a whole picture. And that's why. And it's maybe sort of media, it's really hard to fudge all of that. It's really, really hard to pretend all of that. And it's something about, I think one of the comments I seem to see a lot in this type of press is surely everyone's a bit ADHD. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. But there's 18 symptoms. We need at least 5 of them robust, present over life. And dependent on where they sit in those symptoms is whether it's inattentive, hyperactive, or combination ADHD. So it's about the impact it has on day-to-day life.
yeah, no, absolutely. Um, People can get distracted. People
mm,
cannot be able to concentrate. People can have
mm,
issues with sleeping. You know,
mhm,
they need to keep moving, keep busy.
mm,
You know, but it is, like you say, about how it impacts you and your
mm.
life, and how long it's been impacting you and your life.
Yeah,
And is there things
yeah.
you can do about it? You know,
Mm.
um, so yeah, it's. But people like things that annoy me. I think it's. I do. I always got in my head. It always comes back to how do people keep on saying that that
Yeah.
it doesn't exist or it's been overdiagnosed when they said
Mm,
it's huge. I mean, how long it takes to go through the
mm,
assessment and collating all the information,
mm.
and to get it all together, and then it's like, nah, I don't
Yeah.
believe it. How can you not believe this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, I think the other thing that's not so much in the media, and I doubt it ever will be, is because there's a shame connotation around what I'm about to bring. And I'm a therapist, coach, nurse. So people come to me with ADHD at varying stages of journey and for different reasons. But at least a third of my caseload at any one time is younger people with diagnosis resisting it, not wanting it, struggling to accept that is true about them. So that's just as normal a response to an ADHD diagnosis as I don't know if anyone has really just jumped through the doors delighted. Yeah, it might be a relief and it makes sense and you can do something, but who'd be glad to have a health condition? Any single one. I mean, it's got its perks at times, it's fun, it's creative, it's random, it's imaginative, but it's a health condition nonetheless.
It's. I mean, I mean, I think most people I've spoken to, when they get diagnosed, it's not always a positive thing. You know,
No.
for me, I always say it. I'm still. Well, actually, I think I'm coming out of this euphoric bubble now at the moment, but
Yeah.
it was so good to hear the answers, to understand my life,
Yes.
because nothing made
Mm,
sense. And I've always said
mm,
I didn't tell anyone about the depression and anxiety because I had
no.
no answers for it. I have no reason.
No.
Because I
No.
mean, my wife knew, but no one else did. Didn't tell any of my family because there's always going to be a question of why do you think? I'm
Yeah.
like, I haven't got a
Well,
clue.
your life's okay.
It's
Yeah.
really hard to explain. I just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
don't know. But when I got my diagnosis, and I was
Mm,
researching all about ADHD and everything and all
mm,
what comes with it,
mm, mm.
everything made sense.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
work, my relationships, my home life,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
education, um,
Yeah.
everything just made massive
Mm,
sense, and I was able to
mm,
cut myself a bit of slack
mm,
from not being able to concentrate in school
mm.
and not having the best education. I'm
Absolutely.
predominantly
Yeah.
inattentive,
Yes.
and and I'm not going to really massively apologize. I might apologize to be kind of
Mm,
polite, but I don't feel that I need to apologize. I don't feel that shame or
yeah.
whatever anymore because I mean,
Yeah.
like I told you, I've just had to come off of my medication,
Mm.
and I am not listening to every single word that comes out of your mouth.
No,
As much as I
no.
am the host of the show, and I'm
Yeah.
trying, it's not happening. You know,
No.
um, and and that's just how it is,
Mm,
and it's
mm,
horrible.
mm. Yeah.
Like I said to you before, I've forgotten how bad it felt, and so I've just
Yeah.
had to come off, and it's
Yeah.
horrible. I've done this. It's my second season. I've done, I don't know, 50 odd, 60 odd shows or whatever it is,
Mm,
and I'm here first time doing one without medication,
mm,
and I'm shaking. Okay, I'm really, really, really nervous because I'm not
mm,
being able to concentrate, and I want to know
mm, mm,
what you're saying so I can respond.
mm,
And my head's
mm,
all over the place, and
mm,
I've been dropping this on the floor. I
mm.
just have to come and pick it up because I'm just so
Yeah.
um, and it makes a difference. And right now, I can't even remember where we started with the conversation.
No,
So
and that's interesting because what I would put to it, somebody who's neurotypical that doesn't get it, um, Imagine trying to do your day-to-day job with what you've just described, not being able to stay. And I mean, you have to. It would be a fob off answer. Actually, no, because I guess if you think back to a time where there has been something that's distracted you, I don't know, a bereavement or a worry for a child at school, or you're waiting for exam results and you can't concentrate. That's just what life's like with ADHD until you found your systems that work for you. And just maybe imagining what that would be like having it day to day.
It's awful. It's never been a superpower
It's
for me.
tiring.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's exhausting.
mm,
Exhausting
mm,
for anyone really. Um, and although I'm not hyperactive predominantly, I'm not bouncing off the walls or anything like my head is.
yes.
And I do, sort of play with things, and I play with these, and I sort of twitch my feet and things like that, but
Mm,
swing a little bit on the chair. But it's my head is
mm,
all over, and
mm,
I was never the one to be in trouble at school. You know, I I just can't focus.
mm.
And no, try to focus harder does not work. So it's like, don't tell me this is
Counterproductive,
it.
yeah.
Concentrate. Yeah, okay. Well, I've been trying for like 50 years to concentrate.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, I don't even know where we got to this stage, but it is what it is. Um,
It is what it is.
okay, so when it comes to you got the misdiagnosis, but then you got the overdiagnosis and all
Mm,
that as well, side of it. As in, I guess what I hate about that is people who have ADHD, they're the one getting persecuted. Because if it's been overdiagnosed,
mm,
that
mm,
means
mm.
people would be giving a diagnosis really, and they have really don't have it kind
Just
of
made
thing.
it
Yeah.
up.
So that's
Yeah.
got to be down to the clinicians.
Mm.
You know,
Absolutely,
leave the
yeah.
people alone. Leave
Mm, mm,
the
mm,
patients alone, and you need to look at the clinicians doing it. But they're all
mm.
fine. They're heavily qualified, so to speak. Yes, there's got to be some maybe who are trying to make a little bit of money out of it,
Sure,
or not
sure. Yeah.
really as clued up as it should be. But that has to be massively in the minority kind of thing. There can't be anything really to affect the sheer amount of numbers, you know.
No, no, and again, it comes back to I think just more people are accessing, hence why suddenly it's gone through the roof and there's more awareness. There's another aspect to it, and I think part of the problem is when people say, "Oh, it's overdiagnosed." What are we measuring that against? Where does that figure come from? The magic figure that this is how many people should be
Yeah.
diagnosed. I've it doesn't make sense to me, that comment. I think what sometimes can be unhelpful, in the slight defense, if there is, of those people, is it's like something I've noticed I pick up on through my career, because I'm drawn to it. I'm drawn to mental health. I'm drawn to behavior patterns. I'm drawn to why people tick. It just does. But there's trends in diagnosis that I've seen over sort of a 20-year career, and trends in words that are used. And so right now, it is probably true equally that there is a trend with ADHD being noticed or talked about. Other things that I don't think that are quite a trend at the moment are things like narcissism. So those words get chucked around without meaning. And another one that gets chucked around a lot is OCD. Now, there is no question in my mind that those conditions are debilitating, sad, and have an impact. Are they always formal diagnosis? No. Are they sometimes carelessly used by clinicians or people who have some influence? Oh, that sounds a bit ADHD. Well, that feels narcissistic to me. And individuals are the best one in the world think it's a diagnosis, or we don't know. So perhaps we're aligning to this, and we possibly do have ADHD, haven't had that luxury of having an assessment, which it is, whether you paid for it or waited for it. Um, and we believe it about ourselves, and it's sometimes miscommunicated or misinterpreted by the receiver. I think that happens too, and it's unfortunate. But why not be able to question, or why not be able to have symptoms of it? Oh God, that's a bit ADHD of me. Why not? What's the big
Yeah,
deal?
you can have. I am not autistic, but
Yeah,
I have traits of autism.
tendencies.
You know,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what your diagnosis or lack of diagnosis is. It doesn't take away that you are
sure.
struggling in certain areas.
Yeah, and that's one thing I have to say the government's got right actually, is that with the access to work funding, you don't have to have a diagnosis. It can be symptoms of, and you don't have to prove that. That's one thing I think they've got
Yeah,
right. They acknowledge that sort of spectrum across just humans that are working and with
yeah.
needs.
I agree. That is a good thing to have.
Yeah,
I mean, I had this discussion a while back regarding sort of help and at work and things like that. And it's like,
yeah,
well, why not? Why not
mm,
be able to access somehow? If someone walks in, if I walk into work,
sure,
well, I say walk into work. If I hobbled into work,
yeah,
on the weekend with a cast on my leg,
mm,
automatically, okay, so we're
mm,
not going to give you this to do. We're not going to give you this to do.
mm,
You can do this now. You can until you're better.
mm,
We can do this and whatever. And automatically, without even saying anything,
yeah.
those kind of though I can't remember what they're called now, adjustments, those reasonable
That's it,
adjustments,
yeah.
will be put into place,
Yes.
without saying anything.
Mm,
But because with something like ADHD or autism, you have to
mm,
ask for reasonable adjustments. It seems to
mm,
be, an issue. You're just trying to get something for free, and well, no,
mm.
you had a broken arm last week,
Sure,
or
sure.
the other month, whatever like that. You had
Yeah,
adjustments made. You had adjustments
yeah,
made.
yeah.
You have migraines. You've had
Mm,
adjustments made.
mm. Yeah, and I want my question is why wouldn't someone want to embrace someone's adjustments because you're going to get a more robust team anyway.
Absolutely.
It's cost effective.
You look after the team properly, and then
Mm,
the team will look after you. You don't look after
mm,
the team are not going to do anything for you.
mm.
You know.
I'm with you.
Excellent. Listen, thank you. This has been a really lovely conversation. As nerve-wracking as it's been for me today. It's
Well
been.
done for
I
coming.
tell you what, yes, I was thinking maybe should I cancel? I need to. Maybe I
Mm,
can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. I thought no,
mm.
I've got to. I've got to. I've got to. I'm going to push myself. I want to
Sure.
see what happens. See how far I can
Mm,
go. And
mm.
it's been lovely and awful at the same
It's been
time.
lovely.
Um,
Lovely for me.
but no, it's been great talking to you. It's been great having you here.
Thank you.
And but before you go, can you just tell everyone just about your discovering truth, what it's all
Sure.
about, where they can find you,
Mm, mm.
um, so they can.
Sure. So about discovering truths. Well, that was a company I set up about 5 years ago because what I've done, like a lot of ADHD people, is I've gone down rabbit holes in my career. So through my nursing career, I then wanted to be with clients more and understand their needs more. So I retrained in addictions therapy, and that has just been stepping stones to sort of, well, now I want to learn about sex and relationship therapy. Now I want to learn about trauma therapy, and it ended sort of in the main with big areas with ADHD because kind of all of them sit with addictions and eating disorder. They're common themes, sort of trauma, sex and relationships, neurodiversity. So I've gone on to train in all those things. And I set up Discovering Truths because really, when anyone's on a journey, and as this whole conversation's been about whether they are seemingly exaggerating or giving false truth, or they're literally just showing up and saying what it is the problem, someone's looking for a truth there. So that's what my mission's about. It's about uncovering truths to people. The work I do now with ADHD, which tends to be at least 50 to sort of 50% plus of my caseload today, is working as a lone practitioner, combining my skills and my lived experience or alongside other professionals, in supporting people where ADHD is part of the journey, however that looks. So, whether it is coaching and goal setting and making sense of organization, whether it's therapy around relationships or grieving what you've lost through your journey, or making sense of traumas that is so prevalent. All of us have trauma, but with neurodiversity, with not understanding life, it's going to be there more. That's what I'm about. And I'm just launching 1st of April, a new service for those newly diagnosed with ADHD and what next. Because touching on press, one of the things we see a lot of is it's just medication. Is that what people want? Yes and no. Medication's been life-changing for me, life-changing. So I'm so thankful. And not just on a concentration level, some physical conditions I've had have cleared up as a result of taking ADHD meds or are much better managed. So it's important, but what next? What do you do with that diagnosis? And my new service is a new to ADHD package, which involves collaboration with other professionals involved. It involves one-to-one coaching or therapy, and also a group process so that you can get support from others in the same situation and make sense of things.
Okay. What's your the website address?
Sure. So if you Google or search me on any social media platforms, Bethany Ashley Smith, you will find me. And you can either make web inquiries or you can contact me on any social media forum, and I will gladly get back to you.
Sure. And all the social media and the website and all that, I'll put on the podcast as well.
Please
Yeah,
do.
I will do that. And all the posts I'll put out regarding the episode, it'll be there as well. But again, thank you very much. And for everybody
Thank
else,
you.
please remember, just give us a comment, like, subscribe. I do this because of you guys, because you're coming on, you're giving your story, and you're pouring your heart out basically, regarding your journeys. And this is where I do it, giving you that kind of platform to be able to do that and have a voice for a change. So thank you for joining me on my journey as well.
Oh, well, thank you, Darren, because you do an amazing job of that, and it does make a difference.
Bless you. Guys, as always, be good, be kind, and remember, you're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you.